This video is about 5 signs of autism in babies. And know that just because your child has 1 or 2 of these, it doesn't mean they're autistic. If you want to know for sure, please go to a professional. That's the only way to know for sure. My son Ezra is autistic. Because of the things we know now, we realized there were some pretty obvious signs when he was really little. The first thing is Ezra had little to no eye contact. So my 3 older kids, they hit that milestone of looking at me in the eye when they were 3 months old. 3 months old, right on the dot, every kid. And then Ezra came along. And at 3 months old, Ezra did not look at me. And I just figured, well, he'll come around. And then he was 4 months old, and then 5 months old, and 6 months old, and still no eye contact. We were worried that his eyes maybe weren't working very well. We'd go to the eye doctor. We went several times to him, and he just kept saying, look, there's nothing wrong with your child's eyes. And a really interesting thing, though, is as he got older, like 6 to 9 months old, he would start looking at my face, but he would actually look at my lips, which really, it makes sense. I mean, if you're gonna look at something, you might as well stare at what's moving, right? And so that's what he would look at. He would look at my lips that were moving. And another thing too is he didn't really like to be held or rocked to sleep. And so I would feed him, change his diaper, make sure that, he's comfortable, and I'd put him in his crib. And then he would just kind of look up at me. And when I was leaning over his crib, my blonde long hair, which actually used to be a lot blonder and a lot longer then, was like kind of falling down. And he would look at my hair, and I would sing to him, which he really liked. Ezra loves music, and it kind of helped him fall asleep and calm down. But I remember he would just stare at my hair, and he would never look at my eyes. Number 2 is that Ezra was very content with being alone. Now, don't worry, there's lots of babies and kids, toddlers, even adults that would rather be alone. And this doesn't mean that they're autistic. But Ezra, let me tell you what he would do when he was a baby. He would actually wake up in the middle of the night and he would be happy in his crib and he wouldn't cry. Now, when he was hungry or if he needed a diaper change, then he would cry. And so, of course, I'd go get him and I'd walk into the room and he'd still be crying. And I'd pick him up and he'd still be crying, the same cry. Like it wouldn't turn into a little whimper. He wouldn't even seem to notice that I had entered the room or I had picked him up. He was still crying, and he wouldn't stop until the bottle was in his mouth, because that's what he wanted. He was hungry. He didn't even seem to try to get my attention when I entered the room. It was almost like I wondered if he'd made the connection that, hey, mom's in the room now, she can help me, she's gonna feed me or change my diaper. And when I would come, he would never reach for me. When I would reach down the crib and pick him up, he would never reach back for me or look me in the eye. And I didn't know it then that he's autistic, but now I look back and it's obvious. It's so hard to tell what's going on in my son's mind, but I could definitely tell that he was content and happy to be alone. He would laugh and he would always be smiling. He's that way now. He's always laughing and smiling. We have a travel family vlog called 7 Ahead. It's another YouTube channel, and we're visiting all the national parks in an RV, and you'll see him go down the trail and he'll just be cracking up laughing like it's the funniest thing ever. And he loves traveling like with us in our RV, and he loves going on hikes with the family, and he is really social, but it's just in his own way. And so other people who don't know him might look at Ezra and they might think that he's not social, but they just don't know. He actually interacts with us in really cute, very social ways, but they're in his own ways. And as a baby, he really hadn't developed those skills yet. He didn't know how to socialize. And so it seemed like he just wasn't interested in being social. I remember I'd call my mom and be like, I have the easiest baby in the world. And I didn't know at the time, but in her mind, she's like, he might be autistic. But she didn't tell me that yet because I wasn't ready to hear it. So it's good. And number 3 is no social smile. Now, Ezra is so happy. He's my happiest kid. I have 5 kids and he's the happiest one. What makes a smile a social smile is when they're smiling back at you, smiling at them. So they're responding to your smile. That's what makes a smile social. And Ezra never did that. To this day, he still doesn't have a social smile, even though most of the time he's smiling way more than anyone else. Number 4 is not babbling. Babies are not expected to talk early. Even if you have a late talker, it doesn't mean they're autistic. One sign that they might be autistic is if they're not even trying to talk. For example, my son Ezra, when he was 6 months old, he actually started babbling. He would say baba, and he wanted a drink, and he would say mama and dada. And he did this for about 3 weeks. I was just so excited. I'm like, yes, he's babbling. This is really great. And then he stopped. And even now, he rarely babbles. And I mean, he kind of has his own noises, which are really cute and fun. And I love that I can hear his voice in there. But as a baby, from like 1 to 2, he only tried to make sounds during that little tiny spot of his life when he was 6 months old. And after that, I didn't even hear his voice. I wouldn't hear him try to babble or try to talk. And that was another sign when he was a really little baby. A lot of times toddlers will babble and you won't understand them, but kind of are like, oh yeah, they have their own little language. That is something that a typical toddler will do. Number 5 is the last one, and I'll explain it a little bit. It's not understanding cause and effect. So for example, Ezra would get a new toy, and I remember the new toy would come and he'd be excited about it. He'd want to hold everything in his hands. And I would show him, like, the car goes here and it goes around the track. Or the ball goes in here, it goes through and comes out this way. And he just didn't seem to get it. He would just grab the car and grab the ball and then throw him. And then he'd just grab him again and then throw him again. And I would show him again and again and again. This is what you do. This causes this to happen and then this happens. See? And even though he was shown multiple times, he still wouldn't do it himself. He would also become fixated on certain things in his hands that he would hold, and he'd kind of look at them in kind of unusual angles. And at the time when he was a baby, we didn't really notice that that was even a sign of autism. And so I wanted to share these things just to get them out there. Know that if you want to get your child diagnosed, to find out, you need to go to a professional. And remember, if you have a child with autism, you're in good company. If you want to meet Ezra and see some home videos, we have an autism playlist here on the left. And on the right, I answer the question, how can I get my child tested for autism?